74. 2025.
Here comes trouble, putting on a show like a
What the
domino.
fuck?
I fall, another bottle, don't know what to say. Send me on my way to you. I know you're all that I want, but I don't even know your name. So don't go, leave me lonely. I'll show you another way. And you say it's a one night thing, but something more than that. Don't go, leave me lonely. I'll show you another way. Eyes wide open, holding out for you. Tell me that it's true. Oh, did you notice? I saw you over there, looking like a heartbreaker. I know you're all that I want, but I don't even know your name. So don't go.
Fuck.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun.
Forty. 40K. Let's go. $35. No. Let's go. 35 again. This is bad. Shit. Oh, I think my DPI changed. We'll restart. Fuck. $38,000. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0. Thirty-three thousand. 52,000 is the high score. 68,675. Okay, let's go. We can do this. Fuck, fuck, fuck.
Stupid heart, you took it all from me. Looks so different at the start, but now I'm searching in the dark for what we used to be. In my head, I still remember it all.
Thirty-seven. 42, let's go. Forty-eight, let's go. That's what you say. 42,000. What's my highest? 47. $52. Let's go. Fuck. K 2,865. 52,900. Okay. 55,000. That's better. 55, 0, 55. Fifty-one. Let's go. Nah. Can never recover. 52.
My ultimate's ready.
My ult's ready.
My ultimate's ready.
My ult's ready. In sight.
74,000. 74,800. 58. Fuck. 76. Hmm.
This silly looking warm up got me top 20, and it only takes about 8 to 9. Minutes. I'll show you how it's done. Let's do it together. Let's start with eye warm-ups. First, we have the zigzag tracking scenario. We'll do this only for 30 seconds. Keep your eyes fixed on the circle here and track it when it starts moving. Make sure your gaze is stabilized on it. Think of your eyes like a camera. If the camera is shaky or slow to focus, your pictures, in this case your aim, will be blurry and delayed. Gaze stabilization helps keep your camera steady, switch focus faster, and tracks moving objects smoother. We achieve better target acquisition and smoother tracking, because this exercise trains your brain and eyes to work together more efficiently. And it does that by strengthening the connection between your eye muscles and the part of your brain that controls movement. Next up, we have an eye resting exercise. What I like to do is combine this one with a breathing technique. Make sure to sit down while doing this. If you feel nauseated or dizzy, refrain from doing this exercise. Here's what you're going to do. First, take constant breaths, almost like hyperventilating. Then close your eyes and take a deep breath until your lungs are full. Hold it for 10-15 seconds, then slowly exhale through your mouth. Just follow along, we'll do this once. What we've done here is relax our eye muscles, increased our awareness and focus, and also improved motor skill consolidation. Check out this study on the benefits of post-eye rest, which I'll link in the description. Lastly, we'll do a 30-second blink. I know this might seem silly, but just look at the amount of research on how beneficial this is. We're going to constantly blink for 30 seconds. Blinking helps clear away debris, provides more oxygen to your eyes, and keeps them moisturized, among many other benefits. I know blinking sounds like a given, but when we sit in front of our PCs for longer periods, we tend to forget to do it. The reason I started doing these eye exercises is that when I was grinding to top 20, I became obsessed with refining every tool I needed to perform at my peak. During my research, neuroscientist Andrew Huberman mentioned that reactivity and concentration are directly tied to visual perception. And I noticed that when my eyes were tired, I tend to be able to lock in less, my reactions get slower, so I just put 2 and 2 together. Before I do any active aiming or warming up, I like to start with stretches. The first one we're going to do is a wrist lock rotation. Lock your wrists like this, maintain a tighter grip, then start spinning like this. I will do this for 15 seconds. You might hear some cracking, that's completely normal. This exercise mainly improves mobility, improves circulation, and strengthens the wrists and the forearms.
Left hand is
Fun fact, Scream also includes this in his warm-up routine. Next up, I like to do a lumbrical stretch. We'll do this for 20 seconds, starting with one hand. Curve your fingers like this, and make sure your fingertips are touching your palm or crease. And now just hold it. What I like to do is apply more pressure using my other hand, so I'll just push back like so. You see, most precision aiming we do comes from our fingers. The micro motions that we do, and even clicking reactivity, we tend to utilize mainly our fingers. Once we're done, we'll switch to the other hand and do the same thing for another 20 seconds. This exercise actually strengthens your finger muscles. A lot of people neglect their fingers when stretching, but this helps improve range of motion and also provides pain relief. I've been using a fingertip grip recently, and this has helped me tremendously. This specific exercise is actually recommended by many physiotherapists, both in esports and beyond. And we're done. Now we come to my favorite stretching exercise, the wrist extensor stretch. We'll start by extending our arm, making a slightly tensed fist, and moving it up and down like this for a few seconds. This is just a warm-up before the actual stretch. Now for the exercise, keep your arm extended, make a flat fist, and point it downwards as much as possible, and just hold. You should feel a deep stretch running through your upper wrist and forearm. I like to apply more tension by gently pulling my hand back like this. We'll hold this for 25 seconds. Be careful not to overdo it, you don't want to hurt yourself. I play with a mix of aim styles, and there is this one time I suffered from tennis elbow, which really hurt my aim. So to fix it, I researched pain relief methods, and I came across this specific exercise. Watch the magic happen. When you let go, you should feel instant relief. Now we move on to the other arm. When you grip a mouse for too long, tiny muscle tears form in your tendons, especially around this area called the extensor carpi radialis. This exercise helps by loosening overworked muscles, improving blood flow, and reducing tension on the inflamed tendons. It also signals your nervous system to lower pain sensitivity, which helps the body when it's repairing. One of the most common issues to inconsistencies is fatigue, and this exercise fully resets your arm. Now that we're done with the external warm-up, it's time to warm up our aim. Here we have my playlist, which I put together based on my years of experience. This playlist went through a lot of trials and research. Note that there is an easy version of this playlist. Just look up Aim Activator Easy and you should find it. I like to start with horizontal heads. We'll do this for 40 seconds. The goal of this scenario is to improve horizontal stability, something nearly every player struggles with. I found this to be a common issue even amongst pros. Why is this beneficial? Well, think about crosshair placement. Essentially static pre-aim. Core FPS aiming rule is minimizing aim distance, which applies to everything: clearing, pathing, tracing angles, and micro-flicking. Now notice my technique here. Technique is one of the biggest reasons players struggle to translate aim training into gameplay. You want to be as stable as possible. We'll stay within this line here. We don't want to overflick and correct back. Instead, we want to draw one clean, stable line without pauses or jitters. Let's move on to the next scenario. One thing you'll notice, every scenario we do warms us up for the next one. So we started with a static horizontal scenario, now we have a dynamic horizontal scenario. We'll do this for 60 seconds. Here we want to maintain that stability from the last scenario, but this time we try to apply a bit more control, tracking, and target switching. Technique is really important here. I want to actively aim as much as possible and just like swing my mouse around. And apply a bit more tension and get the blood flow going. Horizontal scenario. Core FPS aiming rule is minimizing aim distance, which applies to everything: clearing, pathing, tracing angles, and micro-flicking. Now notice my technique here. Technique is one of the biggest reasons players struggle to translate aim training into gameplay. You want to be as stable as possible. We'll stay within this line here. We don't want to overflick and correct back. Instead, we want to draw one clean, stable line without pauses or jitters. Let's move on to the next scenario. One thing you'll notice, every scenario we do warms us up for the next one. So we started with a static horizontal scenario, now we have a dynamic horizontal scenario. We'll do this for 60 seconds. Here we want to maintain that stability from the last scenario, but this time we try to apply a bit more control, tracking, and target switching. Technique is really important here. I want to actively aim as much as possible and just like swing my mouse around. Apply a bit more tension and get the blood flow going. Now we move on to stretched micro-flicks. We'll do this for 40 seconds. In this scenario, you're warming up and improving your micro-adjustments. In game, this is one of the main aiming skills I rely on. Even if you have really good clearing, a lot of the times when you open up angles, you have to make a micro-correction to the head. The crosshair will often be slightly off. You'll find many scenarios like this, but I refined this one a little bit. The targets appear for a short period of time. I have about 180 milliseconds to take my shot, so I have to be really fast. In-game, when you make contact with an enemy and your crosshair is off, you don't have the luxury to take your time. The enemy will always punish you. by making the target appear briefly, makes this a reactive microflick scenario. Now we're going to do boxed microflicks, which is essentially the same scenario, but this time they appear in containers. We'll do this for 60 seconds. You'll have small targets appear at once in a container like so. Once we finish shooting them, they'll appear in a different container. This scenario enforces both micro and mid to long range flicking. I created this scenario with angle switching in mind. For example, think you're playing Valorant and want to push exec A site on ascent. You clear fridge and then want to switch angles to heaven and hold for a peek. I want to warm up that specific motion, hence the containers. Because a flick from fridge to heaven is a mid-long range one. So we flick to container and then micro flick to the targets. Next up, we'll do a just track. Now this scenario was inspired by the aiming connoisseur himself, Mali. We'll do this for 50 seconds. The idea behind this scenario is to react to Next up, we'll do a just track. Now this scenario was inspired by the aiming connoisseur himself, Mali. We'll do this for 50 seconds. The idea behind this scenario is to react to unpredictable movements. Here you really want to practice your first shot accuracy. If you think about gunfights, your first shot often determines the outcome of the fight. And that's a given, we all know that. If you whiff, you either compensate it with a movement so that you avoid getting punished, or you try to do a corrective shot. On all the aiming skills you may need for all the different situations, you should target the main issue at hand. People generally opt for what's easy. If I ask you what you would do if you whiff, 9 times out of 10 you would respond with strafing. You wouldn't really say, I need to work on my first shot accuracy and reactivity. You use compensation as a solution. And this is what this exercise is meant for. It's meant for you to work on your first shot accuracy during reactive situations. Now we end our warm-up with reactive range. This one beautifully combines everything we did so far, but with emphasis on reactivity. We'll do this for 60 seconds. This was actually inspired by my aviation academy. I've studied to become a pilot, and unfortunately I've only completed 2 out of 3 certificates. The way they tested our reaction times in school was actually show us objects and we have to click when a matching one appears. The point was to combat predictions. If you compare this to the human benchmark test, you know where the green screen will appear every time. And you're not really doing any active aiming to react. You're just clicking. Here you can see switch angles to heaven and hold. Next up, will movements. 50 seconds, that's fired by the aiming connoisseur himself, Mari. We'll do this.
Today we're doing a quick video where I give you one strategic or technique-oriented piece of advice for every subcategory of aiming in aim training. Let's jump right in with static clicking. In static clicking, everyone knows that you're supposed to farm clusters, but no one really talks about what happens when you leave a cluster. There's often a break in pacing that causes you to miss your next few shots or delay the rest of your path. To mitigate this, a common strategy that VT Cartoon employed was inward pathing. Start by going for targets around the edges of the map, and then path inwards depending on where you see clustering. This helps you to both stay safe in terms of your crosshair positioning on the map, and it gives you a good plan on what to do when you transition out of clusters. For XY dynamic clicking, that is passive or angle shot types, it will help you a ton if you suspend your micro corrections after flicks if you are confident on your target read. It often is better to treat these movements as linear and take safer leading shots instead of going for a distance micro. Even if you land this micro, it can throw you off course, and if you miss the micro, it's even harder to recover. Additionally, in the moment that you are leading your shot, you have some time to look for a fallback target. For bounce or arc dynamic clicking, you want to envision a horizontal line in the center of the map. This is the central line that targets will cross at a speed that you can very easily read or predict. After passing this line, rising targets will decelerate and falling targets will accelerate. You want to position
41.
Position your crosshair along this line, as it is the location where it is the easiest to farm targets. For linear clicking, you will find that many scenarios have central spawning targets. The easiest way to get a good score in these scenarios is to play heavily for accuracy and spawn farm. Pick 2 targets that you want to farm and just bounce between them the whole time. This is very easy to get down with some practice, and it works so well because you only need one initial read as soon as the target spawns for you to be confident of its strafe, since this isn't a more evasive category. In elusive clicking, or as most of us might call it, aim beast dynamic or MBM dynamic, you can lead shots, but you will often need to do so from the opposite strafe direction. Because of how hyperactively these targets like to move, you can often recover from missed shots by microing ahead of the opposite side of the target's strafe. About 8 times out of 10, the target will have already begun this exact strafe by the time your micro lands. Moving on to precise tracking, give the Lori's trick a try. Lower your FOV to around 90 Overwatch and increase your sensitivity to something like 25 to 35 cm. Then play for around 15 to 20 minutes. I guarantee you will PB when you return to your normal settings. This trick works because it makes your errors way more visible, so you are more conscious of the shakiness in your aim. In raw smoothness tracking, you generally do not want to reset your mouse position at all, but if you need to, it is far better to reset early and with a small adjustment than reset later and abruptly. Sometimes when the target is about to change direction and you don't need to reset, just do it anyway to be safe. In control tracking, you need support from tension in your fingertips to control vertical adjustments, not in your forearm. Remember that for the smaller motions, you can bend your fingertips to move the mouse vertically. This is the essence of control. Don't use the muscle group designated for a wide range of mobility for a narrow motion. In reactive tracking, you sometimes want to read narrow strafes as if they are long strafes. For example, on Airvoltaic Bot 4, there is often a bias that the bot is moving towards, even if smaller strafes point the opposite direction. You need to trust this bias while continuing to maintain stability on the small strafes. Try to view this bias as a force that the bot is attracted to, but is also being constantly pushed away from. The force that it is chasing is that overall long strafe, and the repulsive forces showing up in the opposite direction are the small, narrow strafes. In pure reactivity, or aim beast reactive, you do not want to edge track. Having smooth micros will not help you when the targets have instant acceleration. They will not give you leeway. Instead, you want to get back on target here by flicking. This means you will be spiking the tension in your wrist each time, and the smoothness of that flick's landing will depend on how seamlessly you let go of that tension. Moving on to speed switching, if you want to develop really seamless transitions between targets, don't listen for the kill sound or watch the target's health bar. Set your hit sound rate to something a little bit slower and memorize how many hit sounds it takes for each target to die and move on using that as a marker. On to evasive switching. When you land your flicks, you want to do so by transferring the tension from your wrist or forearm into your fingertips to follow through with the tracking motion. Don't rely too much on the deceleration of your flick to handle the track for you. The TTK will often be too high. In stability switching, it can sometimes make sense to avoid flicking entirely. This is because these scenarios are so focused on maintaining really smooth tracking motion, almost to the level of raw smoothness. Mostly, you want to be focusing on target prioritization. Pick targets that are in the most ideal position, whether it be the ones at the center of the map or the ones at the slowest point in their motion. And that is all of the categories. I hope you guys learned something from this video. Hopefully something that will get you to much higher scores in the VT benchmarks and improvement across a wide variety of aiming scenarios. Let me know in the comments if you guys would like to see me do this again. Follow my Twitch to see streams right
Oh.
What is the difference between these two?
थे और मेरा जो फ्रेंड था वो उस खेत के ओनर को जानता था। तो हम उस फार्म के अंदर गए और वहाँ पे जामुन के पेड़ लगे थे। तो हमने जामुन खाए और हम खेत में घूमे और मज़ा आया। फिर हमने सोचा कि अब क्या करें। तो मेरे दोस्त ने बोला कि ये पार्क में चलते हैं और हम
What is the difference between these two players' aim? Even though the one on the left is snappy and pretty flashy, it's not hard to see their weaknesses. They're shaky on their micro corrections and lack smoothness. Their motions are very jagged. On the other hand, the one on the right is much calmer. They look in control of their crosshair and their motions much more seamless. The thing is, both these players are me. The left is from 3 years ago, the right today, and I'm a much better player for this change. But how did I go from a snappy style to a smooth one, and how did I do it without losing my flicking speed? If you looked up how to improve your smoothness online, you'd probably find something about staying calm and keeping your muscles perfectly relaxed. This is how most people go about getting smooth aim, and it can work for some situations. However, this method of aiming smoothly has one massive weakness. Your muscles are the things that make your aim fast. Relying on keeping them relaxed at all times for smoothness will massively limit your speed or your smoothness at higher speeds. I know this because I tried it. When I decided I wanted to make my aim smoother, I took this approach, but never got better at situations where I had to move quickly. The shakiness would come right back. So, how can tension both be bad for smoothness and yet necessary for good aim? Firstly, though, let's have a look at why people think you should keep your aim relaxed to begin with. Try placing your hand gently on the mouse and moving it side to side. And now try again while pressing down firmly on all of the buttons. Doing this requires increasing the tension in our fingertips, and it's pretty clear that movements are a bit more stepped when applying that downwards force, which, when done in excess, can absolutely contribute to a lack of smoothness and lead to massive disconnects between motions. So, why don't we just not tense our hands when aiming? I think that comes down to the reason people start in the first place. It creates this feeling of control. When aiming at smaller targets or in high-stress situations, it's natural to apply more pressure, and from there, it's an easy habit to get into. That feeling of control is fake, though. Increasing tension in those situations makes it harder to make any movement, intentional or unintentional. So while you might become a bit more stable, it will make adjusting to movements next to impossible. Between the mechanical issues it causes and the risk to your hand's health it presents, excessive fingertip tension is absolutely a habit you should try to break. So it's clear where tension got its reputation from. People were applying too much when holding the mouse, stopped and noticed that their smoothness improved, then concluded that all tension was bad. But what if I told you that grip tension wasn't the only type of it, and that correctly utilizing the other types is the actual way to not only get better at reducing grip tension, but also for getting smoother aim? But to achieve this, we need to understand how tension affects different parts of our aim, both positive and negative, and figure out how we can avoid those problems that are so commonly associated with it. Let's go back to the clip from the start of the video again. That sudden burst of speed is achieved using tension, but instead of being located in the mouse grip, this tension is in the muscles of my wrist and arm. I have to place some stress in those muscles to get to that fast flicking speed. But then, how do I stop that movement? My approach at the time was to apply even more tension at the end of the flick. I like to think of tension as a scale from 1 to 10. The start of a movement like this might be a 5 and the end might be an 8. And this looks like it works. My crosshair does stop, but look at what happens after. I can't make the smooth micro adjustment that I need to reach the target. This is because we only have a limited amount of tension to go around. You can test this for yourself. Tense your arm as much as you possibly can to the point of it almost vibrating for 5 to 10 seconds, and then try to make very small movements with your arm straight away. It takes a while for it to recover from that exertion. The first movements will be shaky and jagged and only start to smooth out over time. This is called lockout and is what happens when you try to use more tension than you have available. In the case of the clip from earlier, I add extra tension to stop but have to wait to release that tension before I can micro adjust smoothly. I know we're talking fractions of a second here, but in a gunfight, this difference is significant. Tensed, not tensed. Tensed, not tensed. This is just in the short term though, a tiny delay after an extreme burst of tension. But that isn't the only time this can happen. Both high amounts of tension very quickly and moderate amounts of tension over a long period of time can cause the exact same effect. An example of this might be a team fight in Apex. If your tension starts high and stays high, eventually you'll experience that same feeling. Your muscles will lock up and they just won't move right. So again, it seems like tension is a bad thing here. It's causing either a delay after any flick shot or shaky adjustments. But that's only if you don't know how to control it. I found it helpful to think of high tension like sprinting. It does offer a very powerful burst of speed, but comes at the cost of a lot of energy. We have to rest and recover after doing it. You'll tire yourself out too fast otherwise. But if you were to jog instead, or sprint for a little before going to a jog to let yourself recover, you'll be able to sustain a higher average speed for longer. This is the core idea behind managing tension over any period of time, controlling when you utilize it and when you relax to get the most out of the tension you do have, your tension budget. The second method of stopping the momentum of a flick is that idea compressed into the space of a single mouse movement. You release the tension from the start of the flick before you reach the target. Let the momentum generated carry you the rest of the way. This is tension budgeting in the short term, going from a sprint to a jog. After implementing this technique, I was able to make those snappy movements while still being able to adjust fluidly afterwards. I wasn't stuck in that recovery period. This is exactly how good tension management leads to good smoothness. Having smooth aim isn't just about moving at one speed consistently. It's about being able to dynamically go between different speeds as required. smoothly blending fast flick shots into controlled micro adjustments with no delay or shakiness in between, which is impossible without using tension. Through controlling that tension, we can combine the benefits of a smooth style, the seamless movements and lack of shakiness, with the speed of a snappier style. Then, what about for even faster movements? Large angle flick shots like these, does the same idea of releasing tension mid-flick still apply there? Yeah, and if anything, it gets more important the larger the flick is. The more you have to move your mouse, and the faster you move your mouse, the more tension you use and inertia you create, which all still has to be counteracted to stop that movement. So stopping the mouse using tension requires more of it, the downsides get worse. But stopping by releasing tension gets easier, since the window you have to release it in gets larger. On top of that though, there is another technique we can implement here to make our movements flow together even better. But to explain that, I first need to talk about muscle groups. There are two muscle groups that most people use to move the mouse, the wrist and the arm. Because of its smaller range of motion, the wrist is more suited to smaller movements like the one showed earlier. The arm, on the other hand, has a higher maximum speed and a wider range of motion, so we want to primarily use it for larger movements. Since tension is just us activating our muscles, that means that we can tense each muscle group individually. So for flicks, we can tense our arm without tensing our wrist. What this means is that even if we can't release all of that tension we needed to start the flick in our arm in time, we can still make follow-up movements with our wrist since it already had very low tension. Each muscle group has independent tension budgets, so we can dynamically change how much tension we are applying to each one to let the other recover. This applies across every type of aiming as well. For example, start a track by adjusting with your wrist and slowly transition into following through with your arm. The arm and wrist aren't the only two muscle groups we can use though. Remember grip tension, the thing that was never good and was the cause of unsmooth aim? Coming back to it after learning all of this about dynamic tension management gave me an idea. What if fingertip tension is similar, useful when controlled properly? And it is. Utilizing my fingertips when aiming was honestly a pretty massive breakthrough for me, even though at the time I didn't move the mouse with my fingertips at all. The first benefit this has is stability. Since placing more tension in your fingertips will make movements more rigid and snappy, even if those movements are made with a different muscle group, varying the amount of fingertip tension you have opens up a way to get similar benefits to what wrist tension offers without actually tensing your wrist. So when tracking a target, if you have to correct for a change in direction, you might place some tension in your fingertips to make that correction snappier, which will work even if you don't move the mouse with your fingertips at all. Dynamically controlling the amount of tension I placed in my fingertips, adding or removing it as needed, was what finally got rid of my issues with gripping my mouse too tightly. Gaining control over it fixed that weakness. The second and much more impactful element is actually using them to make movements. Even when holding my mouse in a claw grip, they have a surprisingly large range of motion. And since they are the most precise muscle group we have, the accuracy within that range of motion was a lot better than what my wrist could offer. Plus, having a third tension budget to offset tension too helped a lot with my overall tension management over longer periods. Okay, I know this is a lot of information and it can be pretty hard to grasp what this stuff actually does when looking at it in a purely theoretical context. So how does tension budgeting on a longer time frame apply in games? A big one for me was trying to flick as quickly as possible between angles. My thought process was that it would reduce the potential downtime where I could get swung and taken by surprise, and kept me feeling locked in, and those things are true. But I didn't realize how much tension those movements used. Snapping between angles caused both a delay between the flick and any movements after in the short term and a long-term tension budgeting issue. My tension would gradually increase as I kept flicking between points, and by the time I actually got into a gunfight, I had none left to utilize, both because of the high tension itself and because I was exclusively using my wrist. Now, through both implementing releasing my tension mid-flick and integrating more muscle groups into my aim, I'm never even close to entering lockout when starting gunfights. Any snaps between angles that do happen are led with my arm, leaving my wrist and fingertips free to micro-adjust if I need to. A similar thing can happen in tracking-focused FPS games as well. After a gunfight that requires a lot of tension, it's easy to unintentionally hold onto it, especially when nerves are factored in, which can result in the same issue, entering the next gunfight almost at the point of lockout. This is why it's good to get into the habit of relaxing your muscles, releasing that tension, and refilling your tension budget in preparation for your next engagement. This is probably part of why the advice to take deep breaths, relax, and stay calm in games is so effective. It helps encourage good tension management by getting you to relax your muscles. Another thing to be mindful of in games that require tracking is the tension flicks used overall. Even with good tension management, if you are flicking really fast, that recovery period afterwards can cause a disconnect between a flick and a track. Sometimes it can be faster in terms of time to kill to flick a bit slower, especially in games like Apex or Overwatch, just to ensure that you have a smooth transition between the two movements. Now, this information is great and all, but keep in mind, when talking about flicking technique, this is how quickly that is all happening. It is impossible to be aware of this in real time, and I doubt most players who are very good at flicking have even considered it. The value of this knowledge comes from how it informs the habits you've strived to develop. Unless you're doing something very wrong, like over-tensing like crazy for every movement or only using your wrist for everything, knowing and understanding this won't change your aim overnight. What it will do is set you up to develop better aiming technique and allow you to work towards a better balance of speed and smoothness. There are two parts to this. The first is being aware of what different levels of tension feel like. The second is being able to control it on both short and long timescales. I worked on both of these by playing mostly tracking scenarios in aim trainers. Tension plays a similar role there to what it does in flicking. It is a temporary speed booster. When a target changes directions, we want. Now, this information is great and all, but keep in mind, when talking about flicking technique, this is how quickly that is all happening. It is impossible to be aware of this in real time, and I doubt most players who are very good at flicking have even considered it. The value of this knowledge comes from how it informs the habits you've strived to develop. Unless you're doing something very wrong, like over-tensing like crazy for every movement or only using your wrist for everything, knowing and understanding this won't change your aim overnight. What it will do is set you up to develop better aiming technique and allow you to work towards a better balance of speed and smoothness. There are two parts to this. The first is being aware of what different levels of tension feel like. The second is being able to control it on both short and long timescales. I worked on both of these by playing mostly tracking scenarios in aim trainers. Tension plays a similar role there to what it does in flicking. It is a temporary speed booster. When a target changes directions, we want to use some tension in our wrist or fingertips to catch up to it before releasing that tension once we do catch up to let our tension budget refill before the next strike. Even with that, we have to use tension sparingly though. These scenarios often go for a minute or longer, so even if you release that tension after an adjustment, using too much on those adjustments will build up over time and can lead to lockout. Scenarios like Air Voltaic or Wisphere were fantastic for making me more aware of what different levels of tension felt like, and how much I actually needed for each movement. With a single strike. Even with that, we have to use tension sparingly though. These scenarios often go for a minute or longer, so even if you release that tension after an adjustment, using too much on those adjustments will build up over time and can lead to lockout. Scenarios like Air Voltaic or Wisphere were fantastic for making me more aware of what different levels of tension felt like, and how much I actually needed for each movement. With a single exception, tension issues over a longer time frame had much more mental than physical causes for me. things like bad habits I'd built up or issues I just wasn't conscious of. Some examples that I've talked about here are death gripping your mouse, snapping very quickly to angles, or not releasing tension after fights. But there are a lot more, and I don't have the time to go through them all in this video. In my experience, the best way to identify these was reflection. A lot of the time, these issues lead to dying in-game, which is actually kind of a positive here. It gives you time to think about if you were too tense or not, figure out why it came about, and make a note to release that tension in the future. The one exception to this mental rule was muscle group relaxation. I used to play with only my arm, then swapped to only my wrist when I started using a higher sensitivity. And no matter what I tried, I just couldn't have good tension management when only using a single muscle group. There simply was nowhere to offset tension to, and a lot of the time you won't have a chance to just stop moving mid-fight and release that tension without offsetting it to a different body part. It's like trying to run a relay race solo. You're probably going to lose. I recommend trying to use at least 2 muscle groups, but honestly, I found that I got a lot better at skills I was really weak at after actively training all 3. Now for the hard part, actually being able to release tension in the middle of a flick or a track. How I went about this personally was with aim trainers. I played scenarios like World OTS or Bean TS for flicks, as well as the aforementioned tracking scenarios, and actively thought about how much tension I was able to release tension in the middle of a flick or a track. How I went about this personally was with aim trainers. I played scenarios like World OTS or Bean TS for flicks, as well as the aforementioned tracking scenarios, and actively thought about how much tension I was using or when I was releasing it. I don't think aim trainers are absolutely needed for this though. I know that thinking about your aim when you're playing is generally considered a bad thing, and I agree. I try to keep my mind on the match when I'm in one, but when practicing, whether that's in death matches or aim trainers, I've found that actively thinking about my mechanics, experimenting with different variables, figuring out what works best, and focusing on making that a habit to be incredibly valuable. So in those death matches, I might try experimenting with how early within the flick I can release my tension before I start to underflick. Or on those Kovacs scenarios, I'll see how much tension I can use when starting a flick before it has any negative impacts. This process of experimenting with different ideas, seeing how they change my own mechanics, and reflecting on that to see what works and what doesn't, has been invaluable to both my understanding of tension within aiming and, honestly, aiming as a whole. And if you take one thing away from this video, it should be that. Don't be afraid to experiment with your mechanics. It forces you to actively think about your aim and what you can do to improve it, which, at the end of the day, is what practice is all about. Thanks for watching. Believe it or not, I have a lot more to say on the topic, but this video ended up being way longer than I expected it to be, so the average person's reaction time is 200 milliseconds. Professional players can get that number into the low hundreds, but then how are these players able to react so much faster than even that? In this example, Hollow reacted in, on average, 58 milliseconds. This number isn't just pushing up against the human limit of how fast you can be. This breaks right past it into the realm of the impossible. But it isn't impossible. These players can all do it and they're not cheating. So that means they have to be doing something else to be able to react this fast. Are they just guessing what the other person will do? Prediction is fairly common when trying to track someone moving like this. It can create crazy looking instances of perfect tracking, but comes with the potential downside of this. What prediction is, at its core, is just guessing, and when you're tossing a coin for every change in direction, you'll never be as consistent as the players I showed before. I don't think prediction is always bad, but I don't think it's all of what they're doing to be able to aim like that. The opposite of predicting movements is just reacting to them. It's probably the simplest approach and is generally fine, but like I said before, we are limited by our reaction times here. For each time the target changes directions, we have to see them start moving in the opposite direction, process that change in direction, and then move our mouse accordingly, which creates a delay between each movement. This is completely normal and is also visible when watching a lot of very good players, but some people just don't seem to have this issue. They look faster than what should be possible when aiming purely reactively. Well, that's because there's a whole third dimension that is missing from this prediction to reaction spectrum, a trick that's applicable to all of the games I've shown so far, and that basically every top player is using, even if they have never thought about it consciously. You don't need crazy fast reaction times if you know what the enemy is doing before they even do it, and the best way to know that is through something called movement reading. The core of it is that you can pick up on cues present in the game to inform both your predictions and reactions. In my opinion, it's almost essential to master when developing good aim, but like I said, is almost never acknowledged consciously. Because of that, I think the best way to explain this concept is by using a genre where it's a core feature of any player's skill set. Souls-X. In all of these games, how you need to react to an enemy's attack depends on the specific attack they do. So they might go for a low sweeping attack that requires you to jump over it, or a thrust attack that you need to dash into to counter. Doing the wrong response for a certain attack can potentially just kill you outright, and you can only know which response you need by focusing on the enemy and interpreting the information contained within their animations. Now, with that in mind, have a look at this animation. Before the target has actually physically started to change directions, their player model has already begun to shift, presenting us with a lot of visual cues to pick up on to inform how we should react. This is the main component of how these players in the intro are able to adjust for movement as fast as they can. The animations telegraph what the enemy player is about to do. Like in this example from Fluorescent, she's able to recognize the first few frames of the dash animation and account for that extra distance when she starts her flick shot. That, and most other obvious examples, are on the extreme end of things though. Usually the impact animation reading has in a game like Valorant manifests in much more subtle ways. Hard to spot, but still incredibly impactful. Like, how does Sarah know that the clove in this clip will start strafing back? She doesn't even try to correct to their new position, just lets them walk right into her crosshair. If they had kept swinging, she'd have been dead, but Sarah isn't guessing here. If you watch Clove's movement in slow motion, it becomes more obvious how. There's a snap visible here between animations when the other player hits the key to change directions, which happens a full 150 milliseconds before they actually start accelerating. 150 milliseconds is a lot. It's about my entire reaction time, and Sarah being able to pick up on the animation cues straight away and benefit from all of that time saved makes this clip look absolutely crazy to me.
Yes.
And yet, even with how impactful animation reading clearly can be, I think Valorant is the game where this skill matters the least. While it is an important factor within 1v1 fights, winning those fights can only take you so far. In something like Apex, where individual duels are more important and you need to keep your crosshair on the target instead of just clicking on them once, the time taken to visually react to a change in direction is time you're not doing damage in fights that can end the entire game for you if you mess them up. Minimizing the time you spend off of the target here is essential, and all the information we need to do that is once again contained within those animations. Look at how Vantage's whole model shifts to the side before she strafes, or how this Octane's shoulders slightly dip right before he's about to change directions. Just like in Valorant, the small details of animations give away how someone is going to move before they actually do. But while there are a lot of similarities between how movement reading should be implemented in tactical FPS games and tracking-focused titles, there is one pretty massive difference, and it comes back around to prediction. More specifically though, the potential downsides for predicting wrong. In Valorant, while it might make sense to guess that your opponent will strafe a certain way and place your crosshair accordingly, I don't know why you'd ever shoot based on that prediction alone. Like, this for example just looks absurd. In a game like Apex though, there are times where shooting according to prediction is specifically though the potential downsides for predicting wrong. In Valorant, while it might make sense to guess that your opponent will strafe a certain way and place your crosshair accordingly, I don't know why you'd ever shoot based on that prediction alone. Like, this, for example, just looks absurd. In a game like Apex, though, there are times where shooting according. More specifically, though, the potential downsides for predicting wrong. In Valorant, while it might make sense to guess that your opponent will strafe a certain way and place your crosshair accordingly, I don't know why you'd ever shoot based on that prediction alone. Like, this, for example, just looks absurd. In a game like Apex, though, there are times where shooting according to prediction isn't just a good play, but is the best one for a certain situation. For example, here, as the Octane goes behind the door, Hollow starts getting ready to track an immediate strafe back out and keeps firing in anticipation for the movement that doesn't end up happening until slightly later. Hollow made an incorrect prediction here, but since the two outcomes were either the Octane going behind the wall or the Octane strafing back out, there was no way he could be punished for that prediction. So there isn't any negative here, but the benefits for getting this prediction right, we see that just before. The reason why Hollow was able to track this Octane so accurately in the first place was the predictions he made that were entirely safe based on the location of the doors. Another example is this one here. Hollow knows that there's a ledge blocking the enemy from continuing to strafe left, so he predicts that they'll start moving back to the right and gets a perfect track on them because of it. I call situations like this informed predictions. The other person is basically never going to just keep running into a wall, exceptions withstanding, and because of that, it is safe to predict that they will change directions when they get too close to it. So yeah, while this is technically a guess, it's an educated guess instead of a random one. But what if there's no information to actually use? What if you can't make out someone's animations and have no environmental elements to predict width? What if the targets were perfectly spherical inside of a giant featureless box? Even in the isolation of aim trainers, which feature no animations at all, reading is still incredibly important, it just takes a bit of a different form. And with that new form, they open up a great way to actually train this skill. The core component of all of the games I've talked about so far that makes animation reading as powerful as it is acceleration. Because someone takes time to accelerate to their maximum speed, their animation change can give away what they're doing before we can actually see them moving. But that gradual acceleration itself can also be read in a similar way. If you're able to pick up on the way a target's speed is changing over time, you can infer what it will do going forward. Have a look at these couple of frames. It is a shockingly small amount of information, but from this alone, we can tell that the target is starting slow and getting faster, and if you know how fast the target can potentially go, you can match its acceleration all the way to that maximum speed. This can also let you know when a target is going to change directions. If it starts to get slower, it's safe to assume that you can follow that acceleration gradient all the way down and then all the way back up for a perfect track. This is really hard to implement well though, both picking up on that change in speed initially and being able to aim well enough to match it once you do. That difficulty is what makes it so valuable though. Properly focusing on your target and picking up on slight changes in what they're doing is what's so challenging about animation reading. So trying to do that but with much more subtle tells like acceleration will make animation reading feel so much easier. So if that's one way to improve at movement reading, are there any other methods? Like I said, the biggest element is focus. Being aware of the skill in the first place is nice, but you won't be able to actually utilize it if you aren't, well, looking at the enemy. Which also means that any method of making the enemy easier to follow visually is very important. Try and focus on the circle on the left versus the one on the right. Even though the circle on the right was covering larger distances, it did so at a more consistent speed, making it easier to follow. This is something that we can replicate in games by moving our mouse in less erratic motions. Even though it might seem intuitive to adjust back to the target as quick as we possibly can the moment we realize we're missing, that sharp movement makes it way harder for our eyes to track the target since they're now moving much faster relative to our crosshair. If they were to change directions while that adjustment is happening, we'd have no way to know until after that adjustment ends. On the other hand, if we have a much smoother approach, we can read their movement right as it happens and can therefore correct our adjustment as it's happening. That's all the easy solutions I have though. The most effective and also hardest way to improve at reading movement is just playing more. Familiarity with the the game's animations plays a massive role and is why pros can implement this technique so well without ever thinking about it. How their game works is like second nature to them. You can speed up the process of learning this though, by watching back some gameplay, taking note of what certain animations mean, and trying to pick up on them actively in-game. You can build that intuition way faster than it would develop otherwise. There are also some scenarios in aim trainers, like the one shown on screen, that are very heavily focused on acceleration reading. They all have targets with very gradual acceleration that you have to match at acceleration reading. Trainers like the one shown on screen that are very heavily focused on acceleration reading. They all have targets with very gradual acceleration that you have to match as it slows down and speeds up to get a good score, and I found all of them really useful for improving my ability to fully focus on a single target. To isolate this skill even further, I personally liked playing even easier versions of the scenario than I usually would. So instead of struggling to hit the bot at all, I could fully focus on matching its speed and acceleration. Unfortunately, there isn't any similar training method for predicting movements. Knowing when and when not to implement prediction into your aim based on the environment is something that develops from a lot of playtime. I'd say that if you're newer, it's better to not predict at all than to predict too much, since it will lose you a lot more gunfights than it will win if you aren't implementing it mindfully. VOD reviewing might still help speed up the process though, letting you analyze when you should or shouldn't predict based on the situation without the stress of actually being in the game. I know that it might feel a bit strange to end a video about how to react faster without learning how to improve your actual visual reaction time, but truth be told, I don't think it holds basically any significance. If it's something you're worried about or it's exceptionally slow, it might be worth training, and I personally have gone from over 200 to almost 140 now after a few years through aim training and improving my health, but I certainly didn't feel slow in games before. This one number is something I've seen gamed over and over for poor in-game performance, but genuinely is such a tiny fraction of what makes up a good player. It really isn't worth worrying about, and I think being able to read movements well is a far better and more practical thing to spend that energy focusing on. In previous videos, I've talked a lot about different aiming misconceptions, and most of them tend to start and end with the idea of instant improvement. And the conclusion to all of those videos has been that there is no cheat code to aiming, and that it just comes down to putting in the time needed to develop your skills. But then, if you can't optimize outside factors, can you optimize the time you put in instead? Is there a most efficient way to train your aim, and if there is, what is it, and how far can we narrow this down? If you haven't already heard of them, aim trainers are that most efficient method. When compared to trying to train your aim by just playing the game, the amount of time you spend actually aiming is way higher in an aim trainer, meaning you get more practice in for your time, and on top of that, the ridiculous number of scenarios gives far more options when it comes to working on weaknesses in your aim when compared with any in-game training tool. Even if these scenarios aren't one-to-one with a specific game, aim trainers are still the best way to develop good technique, which will carry over into any FPS game. This probably isn't new info for you, but something I haven't heard answered as much is the how. How do we actually isolate and improve upon weaknesses? How can you tell what your weaknesses even are? And what's with all this vague discussion about good technique? My goal with this video is to go through everything you need to know to get into aim training and how to get the most out of it. I'm hoping to write this in a way that will naturally follow players' progression and the info will build on what's said prior, but if you are more experienced and already know the basics, don't be afraid to skip ahead. For now though, let's start at the start. Which aim trainer should you choose? There are two main options I'd recommend to beginners, Aimlabs and Kovacs. Kovacs has better scenarios that cover a wider range of skills, and I strongly recommend it if the main game you play is Apex Legends for a reason I'll get into later, but Aimlabs is free. If you aren't sure you want to spend a lot of time aim training, I recommend starting with Aimlabs and seeing if you stick with it, and if you do, swap over to Kovacs. If you are going to put the time in, it's well worth the asking price. So you've got your aim trainer, what now? The first step is to get some nice settings. I've linked two videos below, both by Matty OW, where he talks about his Kovacs and Aimlab settings. How much these matter for improvement is debatable, but I personally find it a lot easier to commit to playing aim trainers with nice hit sounds and visuals. After that, I'd recommend trying the Voltaic benchmarks. These aren't an all-in-one training tool, but they do provide some good scenarios to start with. However, more importantly, they give you an idea of where
Are you guys tired of losing every single game or bottom fragging? Well, don't worry, because in this video, we got you covered. This is the AimStar method, an aim training system designed to help anyone improve on their aim. Not only if you're a new player, but also for players that have been playing the game for years. In this video, guys, we're gonna cover all the essentials, such as a proven routine for the range, some tips for your deathmatch games, and also, apart from that, we're gonna provide you with a custom Aimlab playlist built for real in-game improvement. So this is the basic guide and is 100% free. So log in and let's get your aim where it needs to be. This is the AimStars method.
So I'ma love you every night like it's the last night.
Copyright.
Like it's the next to you. If the party was over and our time on earth was through, I'd wanna hold you just for a while and die with a smile. If the world was ending, I'd wanna be next to you. Ooh.
Game starts. Game starts.
Been pretty dog shit. Matter of fact, let me show y'all these clips. So to fix that, I will be using the ultimate aim star method from Nawi that he posted recently. So this method are split into three different parts, which are aim labs, the range, and death matches. Okay, so let's talk about aim labs. So the first thing we want to do is play, training, go to search, and search up aim stars, and it should be aim star method from Look at a Cat. The range. So start by jumping on the ledge, then you start shooting the ball while standing still. After a while, you can start adding movement. After that, you can pop O, use the glide ability, and shoot as many bosses as possible in one glide. Next, stand in the middle or in the back and start shooting the boss standing still. When you feel good, start adding some movement to it. So Shiso pop his shield and shoot a bot while standing still. After a while, start adding movement to it. I also do every exercise for like around 30 seconds. Death matches. So we are doing 3 death matches. The first 2 are just with Vandal and the last 2 with Sheriff. Day 1. So on day 1 we're just starting out with some aim labs. Then we're gonna hit the range. And after that we're gonna hit 3 DMs and we should be ready for comms. After aim labs I did the range, then next forward is going to be DM. Going to DM, I feel like super warm, and I was able to hit a lot of good clips, like some of this. After finishing the aim star routine, I went ahead and queued into some calm games. I did manage to get a lot of crazy clips for day 1.
Not ready yet.
What's up?